On average, people use social media for 144 minutes every single day. Due to its impact on society over the years, Social Media Day was born on June 30th, and it has continued to grow in popularity ever since. As we commemorate the day, let's speak to social media expert Dean Makubri on how parents can create safe online environments over the holiday season, and I suppose and beyond too. Dean, very good evening.
Good evening, and thanks for having me on your show.
So there are obviously a lot of challenges around social media, and certainly the management of it for parents and the children in particular. What is most obvious, or what is it that we should look out for?
Well, I mean, obviously the difficulty here is that most people miss is that there are different types of parents. So you've got conservative parents, you've got neutral parents who kind of are a little bit apathetic, and you've got liberal parents. At the same time, each child is completely different. So you could have kids which are really exposed and a little bit risky and rebellious, and then you can have other kids that are interested in drone engineering, as an example. So the first thing that we've got to do is we've got to work out who we are as the adults, both the mother and the father, and then we've got to work out what type of child we're dealing with. And I know this sounds really complicated because you'd think that I would be saying, okay, we've got to shut everything down. But what happens if you've got an incredibly talented digital citizen out there in the world that's going to make a great difference to the world? What happens if you've got somebody who's watching a wildlife and nature documentary online, whereas the other one is completely addicted to TikTok and is potentially at risk of a predator? So what do we need to do first? We need to understand what type of parent are we, how in alignment we are, and then what type of children do we have. And then we can work out what level of privacy our kids need to have. That's what's really important. Of course, most kids need to be protected. I do get that. But some kids are not that risky, and we need to understand that. It's really important, because otherwise we're boxing them all like billions of us are online. We're putting everybody in the same box. That's not right.
Some kids are not that risky. I think my little boy would hasten to argue with you there. But here's the other issue, and that issue is that knowledge is power. And I'd imagine that the reverse is true, that there's so much that's happening in the world of technology that us parents are not familiar with. So it tends to happen that our children know a lot more than we do, right? So where you think, okay, maybe I'm a mildly conservative, or on the other end, you're a little bit liberal, let me allow my children to do this. But there's so much to the World Wide Web that is going on that we are not familiar with. How do we deal with that?
Well, there is an incredible amount that's going on that we don't know. And again, this comes back to what type of level of engagement are you or do you have as a parent? Again, there are parents that are really involved, myself, perhaps yourself, or many others out there that are really engaged. There are some that are really into tech. The point is what you've got to do is you've got to understand that the solution lies through great digital parenting, great support from teachers, and a great digital life skills program in schools. We've got life orientation in schools, but unfortunately it's not modern, and largely most of it isn't digital. People think it is, but it's not taught in a relatable way, which talks about social media, gaming, TikTok, Twitch, Insta, Discord, the list just goes on and on. What we've got to do is we've got to talk to kids about the importance of privacy, cybersecurity, mental health, critical thinking, reputation, and digital footprint. These are the words of digital citizenship that are going to take us through the rest of this decade. Okay, and what we've got to do is we've got to realize that the solution comes from great mentoring from the adults. That's teachers like me and like our program, from great parents and from great teachers. All I'm saying is we've just got to be careful about, there are lots of kids that I see. We teach tens of thousands of children. Not all of them are addicted to TikTok. Some of them are really interested in coding, and some of them are interested in drone piloting. You'd be amazed by what's out there. Stereotypically, we're bunching them in one group. We just need to make them safe.
Allow me to interject. And you've talked about these courses for kids or for young children, teenagers or others. What about the courses for us as parents? Because I think, for me, that is where I would like to start. I would need, as I'd imagine many other parents, to be equipped with a skill set to be able to separate the wheat from the chaff, so to speak.
100%. You're 100% spot on. And we have that. That's exactly what we do. So on our site, mysociallife.com, I'm not here to punt, but on our site, mysociallife.com, we have a digital parenting course. It's about 90 minutes long. It costs plus minus 300, I say that because the dollar keeps changing, but plus minus 295 Rand. It's going to give you 75 minutes of video training. It's going to give you a whole load of downloads, and it's going to show you what you can't see. It's going to show you about what the settings are that you need to put in place. It's going to show you the things that, are happening in your child's world.
Well, let's talk about what you can't see. I mean, I'm seemingly interjecting all the time because I get more and more excited as you speak to certain things. I watched a video on YouTube or somewhere that speaks to, if an adult is on YouTube and is going through, there's certain adverts that are coming up and certain products that are being sold to me based on certain algorithms, right? Now, my 9-year-old son or my 11-year-old daughter then comes onto the internet, and all of a sudden it's a different range of adverts and products that are being sold to them. Was this a figment of my imagination, or is this how the World Wide Web, the internet, actually works?
Yeah, well, we need to understand that essentially, and this is what we teach kids. This is incredible, and obviously what we need to teach adults too, is that almost every piece of information about us that we've logged in a form, or every click that we make, is what's known as a data point. Okay, so we've got thousands of data points about us. That makes up what's known as a data packet or a data bundle. So you have a data bundle, I have a data bundle, and that tells the internet, particularly social media platforms, about what we are, who we are, what we like, what we're interested in, what outrages us, what we prefer, what sports we're into, what sneakers we love, and so on. And they look at it and they go, right, well, I've got all this information. I'm going to serve them all those types of information. So it's essentially what we put into the internet is what it serves us out. And that can be things that we prefer or things that outrage us, because ultimately the internet is interested in keeping us online or on those social platforms as long as possible, because that means that we will be online even more to potentially see those ads, which is where they make their money. Simple as that. The way in which we can protect kids from that is that we need to keep them away from those algorithms, and that's why 9, 10, and 11-year-olds shouldn't be on social media platforms. The maximum that they should be on is something like YouTube Kids. They should be playing on a certain type of game, which is not necessarily something like Fortnite. It needs to be something like Toca Boca as a really good example. And if they're on YouTube, they should be on YouTube Kids. Should they access web browsers? No. Should they access YouTube? No. TikTok? No. Insta? No. What they need to do is we need to realize we're putting them onto the internet using either your device, or perhaps in some cases you'll see 8, 9, 10-year-olds that have their own smartphone device. If that's the case, you need to put them on the reel and let them out very slowly. I don't advocate for kids to be on devices or on social platforms until they're 13. I really don't. Their brains aren't ready. But if that's already happened, what are you going to do? Are you going to take them off? Hopefully. But if you're not, what you've got to do is you've got to go back and say, right, well, here's what you can use. Here are the safety settings that that I'm implementing on your device, and this is the way that it works. On our in our program, and even on our site, for utterly free, completely free, there is a social media parenting agreement, and essentially it gives you a bit of control. It says sit down with them at the table and work through this with them. It's not like a contract where you're going to dictate to them. You're going to say to them things like, how many apps do you think? Let's say it was a 12-year-old. How many apps do you think you should have? How many social platforms do you think you should have? How many friends do you think you should have? Have a discussion with them. You're going to be amazed, both good and bad, about what they're going to tell you. But the point is, you need to have a discussion. You need to engage. You need to debate. Because what it's going to do is it's going to build trust. And ultimately, when things go wrong, trust is your biggest friend. It's how you can save your child.
Dean, you've talked to us about a few don'ts. So let's talk about how much time we should allow our kids to spend on their tablets or on their devices. I mean, at the intro there, we talked about 144 minutes for the average individual. How much time should we allow our kids? I mean, I'm talking about kids that aren't teenagers yet.
Yeah, so it's really variable. I mean, the World Health Organization, can you believe this, says that between the ages of 0 and 2, they should have 0 hours. Yeah, of course. But of course, we see kids wandering around in prams with devices, and that's just the way it is. That's where we are. But ultimately, for young kids, they really shouldn't have more than an hour of time online. But this is the problem. We're focusing on the time. We're not focusing necessarily on what they're watching. So if you're going to put them in front of a certain TV channel watching animation, and then you're going to put them on a device watching animation, how different is it? Well, the difference is the portability of the device and how they get attracted to that device, which is going to have a long tail problem on it. In other words, they become addicted to the iPad because they see that as the source of fun as opposed to a TV. But ultimately, still, over the long term, and we're going to see this from 2024 through to 2030, that kids are moving away from TV. We see that DStv is really in a lot of trouble because we've moved to streaming media. And then now what's happened is we're moving away from TV into tablets, and from tablets into phones. And later from phones, we're going to move into virtual reality devices as well. So ultimately, what we've got to understand is this thing's always shifting. It is always shifting and always changing. And we've got to work out what is it that they're seeing that influences their brain for good or for bad. So if you get a child watching Bear Grylls survival videos on a tablet, I would classify that as really good. If you seeing a child play Fortnite on a phone, then what's happening is you're looking at the portability of a phone and you're looking at an extremely addictive game, then you're realizing that that's going to be a lot more sticky and a lot more influential than a child watching Bear Grylls and survival or a National Geographic documentary on TV or on a tablet. You've got to associate it with what they're consuming, what goes through their visual cortex, gets consumed in their brain and gets stored. Look at it about what they're consuming. Yes, I do agree that if they're spending 6 hours on a tablet, that's a problem. But also just work out what they're looking at. And is it good for them? Is it making them better? Or is it making them more addicted, more aggressive, more negative, poor mental health? Then they're going down the wrong rabbit hole. That's what you've got to be looking out for.
Dean, are there any specific regulations or laws in South Africa that address the responsibility of social media sites in ensuring the safety and appropriateness of their content, particularly for young users?
That's such a good question. And can we come along for another 15 minutes and do this next week? But ultimately, look, they're amazing. There have been some amazing social medias, the most prolific of which is Emma Sadler. And she's done some amazing work, and they have brought in new laws. Everything from, the Film and Publications Board have something to protect kids around pornography. And then we've got the Cybercrimes Bill. There's lots of good things out there. But I think Emma Sadler, and I don't want to quote her, would probably tell you that the challenge is that while there are laws, we're still a little bit behind. They could be better. And even when you try and tackle these issues, you would probably need a fair amount of money and a lawyer like Emma in order to be able to protect you. I'm not saying that it's not possible, but I think the challenge is what we've got to do is you can have those laws, and they are important, and you can have those lawyers, and they're incredibly important because she does phenomenal work. But ultimately, what we've got to do is prevention is better than cure. What we've got to do is we've got to start with digital education, which is what we do, digital life skills or modern life skills, which is taught in schools, which is taught to teachers and parents and students. And funnily enough, we teach psychologists as well for audiences. And what we've got to do is we've got to build this safety net for kids. Because yes, we can have the laws, and yes, we can have the lawyers, but ultimately, if kids have awareness and then critical thinking, they're going to be able to navigate the incredible complexity of the net, social media platforms, and all sorts of problems, particularly things like predators, reputational risk, all of those types of things that come with just typing stuff online. Type something out, get something back. You don't know who you're getting it back from. It's very easy to fake a profile. It's very easy to say something to somebody and then suddenly you realize you've bullied somebody and now you're in trouble at school or there's a law case against you. That's what I'm saying is we're dealing with the power of words and images in a space in which there are 4.5 billion people online. This is a crazy space for kids to have to navigate.
Well, Dean, appreciate your time this evening. Dean Makubri, social media expert, speaking to us on how parents can create safe online environments for their children.